The purpose of the commission is to provide recommendations to Secretary Arne Duncan and all of us at ED on what the appropriate role of the federal government is to ensure that systems of school finance become more equitable. Just in terms of sheer dollars, 90 to 92% of all education monies is really a state and local effort. Historically, the federal government has only been about 8 to 10 cents on the dollar. We also have a Supreme Court decision that there's no federal right to education, and the Constitution makes it quite clear that there is a real role for the states in educating its citizens. But the question is, how can the federal government help? It is not just California that has a lawsuit like this. In fact, well over 40 states have had similar lawsuits that challenge their systems of school finance, and many of those cases have held that those systems are in fact unconstitutional, and they've punted it to the legislatures to do something about it. Yet we've seen very little action around the country, and so working with the Congress, namely Congressman Honda and Fatah, the Secretary has called on this Equity and Excellence Commission to really provide some answers on what's possible. We want interim steps, what can be done now, ways that we might be able to leverage federal dollars to produce great change, and long-term solutions on how we can best move the country on this issue. Would envisage that it could be any and all. We have certainly seen preconditions on federal funds in Title I. We have seen that historically. We saw that with No Child Left Behind. We saw that with its precursor, which under Clinton, which was the Improving America's Schools Act. And you will see it in our blueprint, in the Obama administration's blueprint for the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, where we are very clear that there ought to be some preconditions before these monies are used. One of the big ones in our proposal for reauthorization is closing what they call the comparability loophole. And that essentially is that federal monies are supposed to go on top of state monies, right? Title I dollars are supposed to be extra to help educate poor kids, assuming that the state has already distributed its funds equally. What we're seeing, though, based on, quite frankly, common budgeting practices like salary cost averaging, is that many times, once money goes to a district, it is in fact distributed very unequally based on the teacher population in any particular school, alongside other factors. So one of our proposals is closing the comparability loophole. Another proposal in the reauthorization is, for the first time, we are going to be asking states to tell us how much you're spending between districts, and then develop plans on how to close those gaps. So certainly Title I is a part of it. But we have seen, John, extraordinary success from things like Race to the Top. Who would have known that 37 states would change their laws in an attempt to compete for those monies? The president's proposal, for his budget proposal, makes it clear that we would like additional monies for a kind of competitive grant and Race to the Top-esque. The Secretary has often talked about perhaps providing some incentives to districts. Race to the Top was state, perhaps we can help districts. It is through things like competitive dollars and preconditions there, as we saw with Race to the Top, that we also might be able to incent behavior in states and get folks to do the right thing. You would have heard today at the public testimony for the commission many times this issue of using Race to the Top monies or competitive monies, as well as Title I, to really incent change. But there's got to be more. The work that we did in California exposed what other researchers had also exposed in other places, and that is that because of the way we fund schools and because of the way we report how we fund schools, we miss the lion's share of where education monies go, and that is to pay for teachers in a school site. What the Ed Trust West report showed was that in almost every district in California, because senior teachers, more expensive teachers, more qualified teachers, teachers with higher education degrees, because they tend to flock and be clustered in schools that serve the least amount of poor students and students of color. It also turns out we're spending a whole lot more on teachers for students in the least minority and highest wealth schools. I have learned that that phenomenon is not just one, like we saw so deeply in California, but it occurs throughout the nation. Certainly that kind of research that we are seeing both from the Education Trust West when I sat on that perch, but also in many other places across the country are telling us that's a very big problem. So yes, long answer to your question is yes, we are working to ensure that the kinds of inequities that were exposed in that report don't happen across the country, but I will not take credit for that huge policy proposal or its solution, because what we exposed in California is not idiosyncratic to California. It's everywhere, and it's a national problem we're working to solve.